The central banks are stockpiling gold. As JP Morgan himself once said, gold is money, everything else is credit. And it's true, especially during these uncertain times, and I agree with that statement. Now, the World Gold Council reports that central banks have consistently bought gold since the pandemic began. Gold demand increased 10 years ago, but in the last 2 years, as you can see, gold has become extremely popular. Now, central banks in the past year of 2022 made historic amounts of purchasing gold, the most since 1967. So, what is going on? This is happening because they're looking for safe investments, gold and silver, of course, but I'll cover that in another video. Now, no matter what happens, gold will always hold its value. Gold's intrinsic value has been recognized for centuries, although it fluctuates with time. It is the safest investment, which is why it becomes the most default choice to hedge against economic downturns during a crisis. Out of all the gold ever mined in history, about 20% is held by central banks and governments. The biggest official holdings belong to the United States Treasury, of course. However, though, the U.S. hasn't been purchasing as much gold as foreign countries this year or in the previous years. So far, the highest demand for gold has been recorded in the second quarter of 2022. The biggest buyer has been Turkey, which might shock some of you. Second place goes to Uzbekistan, followed by India. Both Turkey and India appear on this list due to a dramatic devaluation of their own currencies. To hedge against that, they are buying gold. What is causing central banks around the world to stock up on gold now, and what can we learn from them? Do you agree? This is an important question. Do they know something that we don't? Well, there is a simple answer to that question. Governments around the world are investing in conservative assets simply because they are uncertain about the future. There is an absolute uncertainty about how bad and how long this global economic as well as geopolitical crisis will last. And this is just not about the war in Ukraine. There's a disruption. There is no sense of stability left. Therefore, if central banks had confidence in the economy and paper money, they would probably sell all their gold at high prices and convert the proceeds into dollars, euros, or any other currency of their choice. Instead, they're grabbing gold in case things get worse than they are now. Now let's take a look at another reason why gold is in such high demand. This is probably the most critical reason, namely, foreign governments are hedging against the US dollar's risk. As geopolitical tensions increase around the world, this reason goes hand in hand. Essentially, this is a proxy war, but I'm just not referring to the Ukraine war. Look at the Middle East and Africa. It is this desire to develop an alternative to the US dollar that explains why governments worldwide are developing their own centralized digital currencies. There are other reasons, of course, but this is one of the most important. Now, strong ties to the US dollar without an alternative is no longer seen as a stable policy for foreign governments. Therefore, when gold's value increases, the US dollar's values drop. And how does this affect the US dollar's value in the near future? In the near future, CBDCs will start being introduced in the US, and the value of the US dollar will begin to decline because it won't be a universally accepted payment method. Therefore, we could see central banks purchasing gold in order to diversify away from the US dollar and to limit their exposure to dollar denominated assets. Now, by diversifying away from the US dollar, central bank holdings are less likely to be affected by currency dips that could threaten their ability to support their own national economies. Considering the reasons we just discussed, as well as the decision to distance themselves from the US dollar, foreign central banks will have more control over price stability in their currencies. In addition, it will help them to push their agendas that might differ from those of the West. An increase in gold value generally indicates a devaluation of currencies. Another reason central banks are buying gold is that they expect the price to rise. According to the Dutch central bank, there is no crisis that can affect the value of gold bars, gold coins, you name it. And that gives us a safe feeling. Central banks hold on to gold as a beacon of confidence, so it makes perfect sense, right? Lack of confidence in the current economic policies, as well as the current political direction, increases demand for precious metals. As we already mentioned, gold has a negative correlation with the US dollar. Furthermore, I want to point out that gold has a negative correlation to stocks this year, given the stock market's sharp decline. It is expected that gold will rise as equities portfolios lose their value or continue to lose their value, as institutional investors have primarily withdrawn from equities. And as a result, some of those investors accrued losses in the stock market, and as gold prices rise, some of those investors will be able to offset their losses. There are so many banks around the world that are seeing so much value in gold and other precious metals. And now, as far as I'm concerned, in order to protect ourselves from the unknown, we should all take another look at what we do and really evaluate our game plan and to stack as much gold and as much silver as possible. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, therefore I can't give you financial advice. But in my opinion, the clock is ticking. So central banks are stockpiling gold. What are you going to do? Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.